Welcome. This is T-rizzle's Variety Hour. You're listening to the full interview release with Shaye Smith of the legendary gospel group the Chuck Wagon Gang. Chuck Wagon Gang was started in 1936 by Shaye's grandmother, sister, brother, and their father, D.P. Carter. Those original members were Anna, Rose, Jim, and Dad Carter. This interview was recorded on October 5th, 2021. It was then aired October 14th, 2021. I hope you enjoy listening. I'm speaking to you today from Chuckey, Tennessee. I'm at Cassie Full Gospel Church with Shaye Smith from the legendary Chuck Wagon Gang. The gang has a concert here this evening, and Shaye has graciously agreed to sit down with me today. Thank you for being here, Shaye.
Oh, thanks, Trent. Good to see you.
If you hear a different tone in this interview, I know Shaye pretty well. Been coming to Chuck Wagon Gang concerts for 7 years now.
Wow.
It's been an honor to get to know you guys. So tell me, you're part of a group called the Chuck Wagon Gang, as I said. Tell me about the group's origins and when it first got started.
Oh, goodness, lots of history for the gang, going back over 80 years. Out of West Texas, my grandmother and her 7 other siblings, her mom and dad, they all were itinerant cotton field hands back in the Depression. And they were actually out in West Texas and a little town called Lufkin, picking cotton. That's where they started, and I got on the radio there, just kind of a little local thing, and they moved to Fort Worth in 1935, and Dad Carter wanted to get on one of the big stations and get out of the cotton fields, and they were blessed and found a job there at WBAP Radio in Fort Worth. And at first they were the Carter Quartet, but then the station needed a group there kind of permanently, and so they acquired another sponsor, this flour company called Bewley Mills, that was there out of Fort Worth, and that's how they became Bewley Mills Chuck Wagon Gang. So 1935, 36, and it just kind of has gone on until now.
Yeah. Your group has had monumental success over the years. What do you think it is about the Chuck Wagon Gang that draws people in?
It's a sound that has remained consistent. There have been little small points of time throughout our 85-plus year history where we've done a couple, maybe had a piano on stage, and then in some of the recordings they've added some more instruments, drums and things, but we've kind of ultimately come full circle back to the way it started. And people always tell us, when I hear a Chuck Wagon song and I hear that strum, I know who it is. And that's really cool to me that we've basically stayed the same, but that people can identify with the strum, with the structure of the songs, and I think that's why folks find it easy to identify with us.
Yeah, you got to keep that iconic intro.
Yeah, right.
I guess as someone could imagine, over 80 years, the Chuck Wagon Gang's had quite a few different members come through. I know the original group was your grandmother and her family. Throughout these years, several members of your family have gone through and been members. Tell me about some of those different members over the years.
Somebody counted not too long ago, maybe 10 years ago, we were up to 51 different combinations, different members that had come and gone. And so by now it's probably up over 60 different individual people have made up the Chuck Wagon Gang at one time or another. Mm-hmm. There's always been a family member, except for a couple of years in the early 90s. So it's basically always been a family group. My mother sang for a short time, and my dad sang a little bit, and so, of course, all my grandmother's siblings. So, yeah, it's always been a family thing.
Yeah. Well, what was it like now, you didn't start in the Chuck Wagon Gang until your early 20s. What was it like, I guess, for growing up amongst that legacy?
Well, and I always almost cringe when I get this question because I have to tell the truth. Honestly, my grandmother married Jimmy Davis, Governor Jimmy Davis, who wrote "You're My Sunshine" in 1969. Her first husband, Howard, who was my grandfather, played the guitar for the gang. He passed away in 1967. And so I wasn't born until the next year. Y'all can do the math, and then now you know how old I am. So I grew up with Jimmy Davis, and because he sang and was who he was, my grandmother sang with him. And so I heard a few Chuck Wagon stories, but really it's like she didn't want to take away from Jimmy, so she didn't talk a whole lot about it, at least when I was growing up. But then when I got into college, or right after college when I joined the gang, then I started asking more questions. I was able to kind of catch up. But I wish I had known growing up what I was missing, but I didn't.
Yeah.
So I'm like always playing catch up.
Well, you're talking about in early college when you first kind of joined the gang. Tell me about what came about when you first joined the gang.
I was actually living in Fort Worth, and I was a music major in college, a vocal major, and I had done all these Broadway shows and operas and classical music. And my grandmother's youngest brother, Roy Carter, called me, and he said, hey, would you like to do some singing? And I thought, well, okay, so went and joined them. Actually sang soprano when I first started. And it was so funny because coming out of school, it was a little more refined sound, and during rehearsals he would lean over and kind of nudge me and say, country it up, girl. He would want me to straighten the tone out, and I eventually figured it out. But I learned so much, did soprano, but then I finally wound up with alto, which is a lot more comfortable for me.
Yeah, like you're saying, you sing the alto part now. What does it mean to you to be able to sing the same part your grandmother did so many years ago?
Man, it means everything. It's very special. It's humbling. Big shoes to fill. She had such a unique voice and such a big voice and just a big presence, and I like to watch videos of her. But yeah, she was an amazing singer, so it's an honor, to get to stand there in her spot.
Well, I think a lot of people say this, but I have to say, you fill the shoes well. You're my favorite alto.
Oh my goodness. No pressure.
Yeah. Tell me about the current members of the gang. Tell me about this current lineup you've constructed.
Well, we had a lot of changes in 2020 with COVID, not just the virus itself and the cancellation of concerts, but I lost my guitar player, Carl. He had some things going on in his life and decided to resign. And then our tenor Stan, his wife, is continuing to kind of battle her cancer, and she's doing better, but just in the midst of everything, he just said, it's time to go home. So I found myself with no bass and no tenor and no guitar player. And that was the end of 2020, and I thought, wow, maybe it's time to shut this down, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And anyway, then we had a concert in Texas that we filled in for, and Daryl Morris met us out there in Texas and filled in that weekend. And after that series of concerts that weekend, he said, I'm ready to come back. You could have knocked me over with a feather, because Daryl and I started together in the early 1990s. So Daryl's back now. Daryl Morris from Joshua, Texas, singing the bass and playing the guitar. And, of course, Melissa Kemper, still singing soprano. Singing tenor for us, a fellow who is no stranger to gospel music. He's been with the Florida Boys, he's been with Dixie Melody Boys, and he's sung with Freedom. An incredible, incredible voice. And when we first started talking, he was going to fill in. And then when he said he thought he might stick around, again, you could knock me over with a feather. I'm talking about Josh Garner. And so Josh has stepped in, and he's doing a wonderful job singing tenor. And for the first time ever, we have an upright bass on stage. I've always wanted that. And a gentleman from Marshall, North Carolina, named Scotty Owenby, is playing upright bass and plays mandolin. He and Daryl do some instrumentals sometimes. So it's an ensemble that, after feeling last year that it was all over with, I feel like God's given me the A-team again, and they're doing a tremendous job, and I think the sound is wonderful, and I'm excited.
I guess kind of returning to the same theme as just a minute ago, considering the group that you've got up now and all that stuff, what does it mean to you to be able to continue to carry on the torch of the Chuck Wagon Gang and become that role of the manager of the group?
I was talking to a pastor just the other night about the way that God uses the Chuck Wagon Gang, the way it started and the way he continues to use it. It was created out of crisis because my grandmother got sick, and they decided to sing to make some extra money, and that's really how the gang started, because she was so ill. And then throughout the Depression, the music was there. People needed something to uplift and encourage them, and they clung to the music and what the music could do for their soul and their spirit. And I see that happening now, with all the stuff in our world that is just so discouraging and depressing. I hope and pray that the gang's music continues to do that same thing. And just talking to the pastor the other night, our ministry, I feel, is and has always been more to edify the saints. I believe God is using the gang for Christians that need some encouragement.
As anyone might imagine, with a group that started in 1936, there's so many recordings, so many albums that the group's done over the years that it's kind of hard to choose from. But since we talked about kind of the basis of the group, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of your recent recordings and that kind of thing, and then recent events too. So I guess let's start off. Tell me about a few years ago you were inducted into the Texas Music Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that.
We were invited to go out there to be inducted, and it was really interesting to learn how many other very famous artists are from Texas and have been inducted, from the Oak Ridge Boys to Merle Haggard, goodness gracious, and now I've gone blank, but all those wonderful, George Jones, wonderful country artists and legends of country music that have been inducted, and so it was an honor to be there. The night that we were inducted, Mr. Red Steagall was the one who inducted us, and of course a fine singer himself from many years ago. So that was an honor. So anyway, yeah, it was really great.
There's also a pretty big accomplishment in the part of this group. I don't think it's many groups get to say something like this. Your group is the one that popularized "I'll Fly Away." Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about the Chuck Wagon Gang's version of that.
Yeah, it was written in 1932 by Albert E. Brumley. And he sent it to all the groups who were singing at that time, which was a little before the Chuck Wagon Gang. Maybe the Lefevres, I'm not sure, maybe the Blackwood Brothers. And there was, I think I'm trying to remember who recorded first, but the gang didn't record it first. There were one or two other versions from 1932. So Mr. Brumley, it wasn't a big hit to start with, so he just kind of put it on the shelf for a while. Mm-hmm. It got put into a packet of music that made its way to the Chuck Wagon Gang in 1948. They got the sheet music and looked at it and thought, well, yeah, we can do this song. So they recorded it in 48, and at that point, the Brumley family tells us it's been recorded over 10,000 times worldwide. Wow. So, yeah, the gang was instrumental in putting it on the map.
Yeah. And that's not even one of their first songs either.
No. Oh, no. By that time, they started recording in 36, so they'd been recording for 12 years when they got this one. Yeah.
And you mentioned they started recording in 1936. I know the very first song they recorded was "The Sun Hath Made Me Free." Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about that song and that first session.
Yeah, they were signed by Columbia, and I think it was because of their ties to WBAP radio. But they were called down to San Antonio, Texas, to the Gunter Hotel, and Columbia was doing some recordings there in a hotel room. They set up a studio in a hotel room, and they recorded November 25th and 26th, 1936. They did 2 days, and they recorded 22 songs over that 2-day span of time. They did, I think, 11 cowboy songs, and then the rest were gospel. But yeah, the first, like you said, was "The Sun Made Me Free." An interesting thing, that same recording session, Charles Johnson, I believe the famous blues player, was on the same session with them in the same room, which is really cool. So again, so much history tied to the gang everywhere you look.
Yeah, I just saw that a little bit ago on one of the documentaries I was watching about you guys. Mm-hmm. Which brings me to my next point here. You've got a long history of kind of recording songs along with composers, and like Chuck Wagon Gang sings the songs of Albert Brumley. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about one of your recent projects in which you did the same thing with Marty Stewart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Marty, through our friend Eddie Stubbs, who was the DJ for WSM and the Grand Ole Opry announcer, Eddie came to a concert, and we all became friends, and he kind of tugged on Marty's coattails until Marty came and saw a concert, and it revived Marty's love for the Chuck Wagon Gang. Found out he had records growing up. His mama and daddy were huge Chuck Wagon fans. So this started a friendship with Marty, and he started writing songs for us. He wrote an entire album of songs and that we recorded called Meeting in Heaven. And it was great to get to know Marty, but it opened up a door, and for whatever reason this popped in my head, going to the Opry. We sang at the Opry several times in that stint of time, and I met so many legends backstage, from Jim Ed Brown to Little Jimmy Dickens and all these different people, and they all treated us with such respect, not because of us, but because of the name. All these legends, Chuck Wagon Gang, and I just thought to myself, wow, and I start thinking back to what my grandmother did, and it's what they did that set the stage for this, and we're kind of reaping the benefits. But it was such an honor, to meet all those folks, and very, very humbling.
On that same note, it's pretty amazing the impact that the gang has had on just people all over the country and all over the world. You've had some pretty high-profile audience members, especially here recently. I remember a few years ago, maybe, Jimmy Carter came to a concert. Mm-hmm. I guess kind of maybe fans or just experiences. What's your favorite experience you've had while going with the Chuck Wagon Gang? I had to think on it a minute.
Man, there's so many that come to mind. Meeting a president was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I think the times backstage at the Opry again, but I think that for whatever reason, the one that pops in my head, we did country classics at the Ryman, and Larry Gatlin was the host, and we were there, and they called us back to their dressing room. We went in the dressing room with the Gatlins, and Bill Gaither was in there, and Eddie was in there, and the Gatlin's parents were in there. And so we stood around and sang Chuck Wagon songs with the Gatlin brothers and their parents. And so it was awesome. So we went on stage and did our thing, and we started to leave, and Larry Gatlin is an absolute maniac. I love him. He's great. But he said, no, you can't leave yet. So he pulled us back out there. He pulled his parents on stage at the Ryman, and we sang, I think we did Jesus Hold My Hand or something like that. So it was really cool to see this. We were part of this little family thing. And just to see them interacting as a family and to be part of that was really cool. Yeah.
I guess I'm going to switch gears a little bit here. I've actually got one here with me today, the Bear Family box set. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that project and how that came about.
Again, Eddie Stubbs, he was absolutely critical in the development of that, the Bear Family Company over in Germany. And they've done box sets on all of the legends, from Hank Williams to Johnny Cash to Flatt and Scruggs, Connie Smith, Hank Williams, all the country legends. And they'd only done one gospel box set, which was the Blackwood Brothers. So Eddie talked them into doing Chuck Wagon Gang, and it was just so incredibly professionally put together that it won 2 of the IBMA awards. It's an incredible piece of art, I think. From the recordings, there are 152 songs that they did in their Texas sessions between 36 and 55, I think. So the recordings are impeccable. The book, the pictures, we worked really hard on it. So it's just an amazing work. Yeah.
In recent years, you've partnered with Crossroads Recording. So you tell me about, I guess, first your first album with them, the Carter Family album.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, signing with Crossroads was a very, very smart thing to do. They're first class, and they've taken such good care of us. Been great to work with. We did the tribute to the Carter family. My family was Carters as well, and people mistake us often. Are you related to Mother Maybelle? And I have to explain night after night, no, we're not directly related. But we realized we'd really never done any of their songs, maybe except for "Keep on the Sunny Side," and that was it. Mm-hmm. So the tenor at the time, Stan, they've got some great songs. So we started picking out some Carter family songs and did that particular record. Had a couple videos that we made with it. Yeah, so to me that was a learning thing, because I didn't know that much about the Carter family till we did that particular project. Just
this year, you released an album called Radio Days, modeled after the original radio show of the Chuck Wagon Gang back in the day. Tell me about, I guess first, would you tell me about their radio show, and then would you tell me about the album? We started doing a recreation of one of their old radio shows from the 1940s, probably 10 years ago. And it's kind of morphed over time into what it is now. We've listened to the old transcriptions, so we have a fairly good idea of how they progressed, and the jingle that we do for Bewley Mills Flour, and then we do a commercial for it, and so we tried to tailor after those original transcriptions. And we had people asking, do you have it on record? And of course we didn't. The CEO of Crossroads, Chris White, he said, we need to put this thing on record. So after Carter Family, we started talking, let's just do it now.
So we did recreate the radio show, but we decided to pull some lesser known songs instead of doing I'll Fly Away again. We thought there's hundreds of other songs. Let's go find some that nobody knows. And so we did. We found for the radio show maybe 9 or 10 more obscure songs, but I think they're wonderful. So I think folks will enjoy them.
I know y'all were singing one when I walked in here at the sound check. "Love Is the Key." It's one of my absolute favorites, like from the box set. I love it.
Yeah.
When I saw it on this album, I was like, "Oh my gosh, they got that one out!" You know. But yeah, that's a really good one too.
Well, we had the box set out, and the way that we chose these songs was we knew the box set would have the songs on it that they would have been doing in the radio at the time, and we listened to them while we were on the road. And we would listen through and we would make our personal notes, and then we would come and compare, and we found the songs that we all liked.
Yeah.
And we kind of voted on them, and so it landed on those that we all thought were good. So Love Was a Key one.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, so for those listening at home, we paused the interview, and Shaye and the Chuck Wagon Gang went and sang a bunch a long time. And we're back now. I just want to say that was a fantastic concert.
Thank you.
Not every group, you can tell, just, is always singing from the heart and is always true with their singing, and it's fantastic.
Thank you. Thanks, Trent.
Let's keep talking about your music. I wanted to ask you about, a few years ago, the 70th Anniversary Project. Tell me a little bit about that.
We did that project and invited country legends to join us, some of them from Texas, but all of them had the same testimony that the gang had been part of their growing up, listening to their records as they grew up. And we invited these folks one by one, and they all said yes. We had George Jones, the Oak Ridge Boys, John Conley, the Gatlin Brothers, trying to remember who else was on there. Lulu Roman did a song with us, but they were all just happy to do it, and they were wonderful to work with, and it was cool to see how the gang had influenced their musical choices as they became musicians themselves.
Like we were talking about before, the gang has this incredible, worldwide reach, and I was looking at some videos the other day and all that. Tell me about the Chuck Wagon Gang. You have a recurring concert in Alaska. Tell me about your Alaska shows.
The first time that it was scheduled, Penny called me and said, she's our booking agent, Penny Shellnut. She said, would y'all like to go to Alaska and sing? And there was just like silence, because I'm thinking, I don't even know how to answer that. Yes, I'd love to go to Alaska, but where do you sing in Alaska? So not only did we go to Alaska, we went to a remote village right on the Bering Sea, Quinnahock. And this particular village hosts a youth singspiration, is what they called it. So these villages out there on the Bering Sea, the only way to get from village to village is either with a snow machine or airplane. That's it. You can't drive cars. There are no roads. It is the absolute end of the world, I tell you. And so these villages, when they do their singspiration, they would fly folks in from other villages, and they would all kind of meet there in Quinnahock. And so there were 700 or so Yupik Eskimos that were there, and they all there were Chuck Wagon records there from the 60s, which was really cool. They knew all the songs. And it was really more like a mission trip when we were there, being able to work with them, and they ministered to us. But it was a real blessing to get to go and be with them.
Yeah, another pretty big event in the Chuck Wagon Gang history, just like maybe a couple of years ago, I think the original recording of I'll Fly Away was inducted into the Library of Congress.
It was inducted into the Library of Congress. It also was put into the Grammy Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah.
As well, which was a real surprise. I think it was inducted the same night that one of Elton John's songs were. I don't know why they didn't let us go, but they did. So I think that might have been in the midst of COVID. But yeah. That song is definitely far-reaching. So many folks, some of them, whether they're Christian or not, they know I'll Fly Away.
Kind of winding down here, what do you see, and this might be kind of a difficult question, but what do you see as the future of the Chuck Wagon Gang?
And we might have touched on this earlier, but talking about the gang's focus, the way that God has chosen to use the gang as a tool It's been a tool of encouragement. It was when it started in the Great Depression. I see that going on now, especially with the future of our country being such a question mark and wondering what in the world is going to happen next. I just pray that God will continue to use our music to encourage people. Just like the last song we did there, When I Need Someone to Talk To, we have to have that joy. This music brings that, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To end, as we've discussed, there's an almost endless repertoire of songs for the Chuck Wagon Gang. I think over 800 you've talked about. If you have one, which I think might have a guess as to what it would be, I'm not sure. What is your favorite song that you sing, and why?
Oh, Trent. My favorite song to sing. Oh my goodness. As far as Chuck Wagon songs, there really are too many. My favorite alto solo is My Cathedral of Dreams.
Mm-hmm.
I just love that song. And there are other songs with harmonies. I love the a cappella pieces we do, like Glory Land, with the message. But I think probably our newest song, The Record Book, is just, it's different for the gang, but the message of it, it is so powerful. And learning it was hard to sing it without crying. Just the message is so powerful. So right now, I would say that's probably my favorite.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely one of my favorites too. I really appreciate you sitting down with me today, Shaye.
Appreciate you asking.
Yeah. So to keep up with the Chuck Wagon Gang, look them up on Facebook and Twitter, and you can catch their tour dates, new music, and anything Chuck Wagon Gang related on their website, www.thechuckwagongang.net. So yeah, thank you for being here, Shaye.
Thank you, Trent.